My name is Jeff McGee. I have the privilege to be the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering here, and I'd like to welcome you to this year's EDF annual lecture, which tonight will be given by Vincent de Rivaz. Vincent is the Chief Executive of EDF Energy, and EDF Energy is our largest producer of low-carbon electricity, and in fact it's also the biggest supplier of electricity by volume in the UK. Not only is Vincent the CEO of EDF Energy, arguably he's also responsible for creating it. He led the creation of EDF Energy through the merger of London Electricity Group, Eastern Networks and South Eastern Electricity Board. That was in 2003, and subsequently he led the incorporation of the nuclear operator British Energy into EDF in January 2009. A few words about Vincent's career. Vincent studied hydraulic engineering at the Grenoble Institute of Technology before he joined EDF. In EDF's External Engineering Centre, he worked on projects in Africa, in Guyana, in New Caledonia. But from 1985, he managed the Far Eastern region of EDF's international division, which included China, before becoming managing director of the hydropower department of EDF in 1991. 4 years later, he became deputy head of EDF International Division, and in 2000, director of strategy and finance for the whole of the EDF group. Finally, he arrived at his current position as chief executive of EDF Energy in 2003. Vincent has attracted a number of awards and honors for his work over the years, including the Energy Institute's 71st Melchet Award in June 2006. He was made Chevalier de la Légion d'honneur in 2009, and in 2012 he was awarded a CBE for his services to the electricity and gas industries. And this year, I'm very pleased to say, he has become a Fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering. So I hope you join me in welcoming Vincent to give the annual lecture. Vincent.
Thank you very much for your welcome. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to be there. And I think on behalf of my great team, I would like to introduce a small short film before we start the tough lecture. Thank you very much. So we can applaud. Okay, as I have said, I'm delighted to be here, to be back at Imperial College for this EDF group annual lecture. I've always felt honored to be at one of the world's finest universities. And I'm also very proud of the relationship that Imperial College has built up with EDF Energy. We have collaborated on a number of research partnerships in recent years, from studying consumer behavior around energy use to training in nuclear engineering, issues that are always very close to our heart. And today, I want to state plainly that our involvement with Imperial College and with other universities and institutions around the UK is not something that is nice to have. It is vital for the future of our business. It is only through working with the brightest minds and collaborating in the most cutting-edge fields of research that we will be able to address some of the most important challenges facing the UK and the world in the decades to come. And I am here tonight to talk primarily about one of the biggest, if not the biggest, of those issues: climate change. As the chief executive of EDF Energy, I grapple every day with an equation, that is how to deliver energy to millions of people in a way that is reliable, affordable, and sustainable. This equation might sound simple, but in fact, it is very complex. I'm not the only one who is trying to solve it. It should be at the forefront of the minds of every energy company CEO, of every policymaker, and of campaigner around the world. And standing here tonight, addressing some of the UK's most promising young talent, I hope that it is at the forefront of your minds too. Reliability. How do we take the opportunity to make sure the UK has the reliable energy it needs? Innovating to ensure that we keep the lights on, homes heated, factories working, research facilities open. Affordability. How do we invest for the future in a way that supports our customers and their priorities now? Sustainability. How do we do this in a way which supports the delicate balance of a global ecosystem, restricts harmful emissions, and ultimately limits the impact of climate change? It is not just a challenge. It is also a world of opportunity, an opportunity to innovate, create growth and jobs. I have been privileged and proud to be part of teams working on this opportunity for most of my career in EDF. I started at EDF as an hydroelectric engineer. It was a few years ago. Hydro was already an important part of the energy mix in France. And France has benefited from that investment, and it continues to do so today. But back in the 90s, there were plenty of people who challenged the role of hydropower, particularly the role that it should have in the developing world. Not everyone was in favor of giving over large areas needed for dams and reservoirs. But we managed to turn that around. And one of the things I have been very proud of is when we secured the World Bank support to build the Nam Ton 2 project in Laos. I'm proud to be part of it, this first new large-scale hydroelectric project in the developed world for some time. And now we can see the strong legacy that investment in low-carbon electricity has delivered for those countries that had the vision to invest. Just a reminder, in France, hydro power and nuclear power ensure that carbon emissions per kilowatt hour are 35 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour, less than 1/10 of the Europe average. So we continue to see progress. And in fact, we meet today at an opportune moment. Just a few days ago, last month, as you may have seen, EDF agreed a deal which makes it possible to build in the UK the first nuclear power station for a generation. A deal that meets the requirement of reliability, affordability, and sustainability. I will speak about it in a moment. And in less than 1 month time, we have an historic opportunity to tackle climate change on a global scale. In December, indeed, the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP21, will take place in Paris. The stakes are high. We know that current commitment on greenhouse gas emissions to reduce global emissions by 18% below 1990 levels reached their end in 2020. The world's governments are expected to reach an agreement covering at least the following 10 years. And the choices they make will determine the world's future for decades to come. The ultimate ambition is to put the world on a path limiting the rise in global temperature to 2 degrees Celsius. I will say a few words about this shortly. Past this threshold, scientists warn us of potentially irreversible consequences of global warming. So the need to contain climate change is ever more pressing. The Pope set out the duty we have in his encyclical on care for our common home earlier this year. And the right to access modern, clean, and reliable energy has been recognized as a key goal by the United Nations. This is a challenge. The conference in Paris has been long awaited, and I believe there is reason for hope. This conference, hosted by France, has seen significant effort under the auspices of the United Nations to bring all parties on board, France and all the other countries, businesses, NGOs, local authorities, and many others. The bottom-up approach is working. We see a shared approach on action against climate change, learning the lessons from previous negotiations. Indeed, much progress has been made since Copenhagen. And precisely, compared to Copenhagen, let me set out what is different this time. As of today, 155 countries have produced their action plans and commitments. That includes many countries which did not pledge at Copenhagen. But more needs to be done. All of the pledges made, taken together, are not enough to stop temperature rising more than 2 degrees. In fact, the UN's own analysis suggests that the pledges, as they are today, will together limit the increase to 2.7 degrees centigrade. But that is a step forward. And without action, the increase could be 4 or even 5 degrees, depending on the scenarios you assume. So we should recognize the progress that has already been achieved. And Paris must be judged not only on the pledges made now,
because it leaves the way open for the world to go beyond what will be agreed in Paris, to monitor, and that is the complement of the bottom-up approach, the monitoring of the agreement's impact every 5 years, and to be prepared to tighten if needed. I think that in this context, the announcements yesterday by the French and Chinese presidents in Beijing is particularly important. François Hollande and the Chinese President Xi reaffirmed their commitment to work together to tackle climate change in a presidential declaration during the visits of Mr. Hollande to China. The declaration represents a strong political statement by China. What it says about transparency and monitoring goes beyond what China has ever said before. So even if Paris doesn't achieve 2 degrees, the road to success is through Paris. COP21 can keep the target within reach. And I am optimistic because there is growing support to put in place both the commitments now and the monitoring and tightening process for the future. The European Union has agreed a new climate and energy package for 2030 with a greenhouse gas reduction target of 40%. The United States of America have already been moving in this direction. And as I've said, the Franco-Chinese declaration yesterday, as the one between the USA and China earlier this year, and many other diplomatic activities, all help to create an environment that is favorable to reaching an agreement in Paris. These are all very positive signs. And to illustrate this with one example, I want to say a few words about the importance of an effective carbon price. I believe that a carbon price that responds to the climate emergency and provides true long-term visibility is not only important, but can be decisive. It is not the whole solution, but there is no solution without a price which is realistic and which decisively supports the right investment. And the fact is that there is a growing consensus on this issue, recently demonstrated in the joint statement from the Director General of the IMF and the Chairman of the World Bank Group. That is why, in this intense international negotiation, where so many economic and political priorities are at stake, Europe, and particularly the UK, can today lead by example. The UK has acted decisively several years ago on the carbon price. First country in the world to do so. And I firmly believe that this country should continue its leading role to encourage others to move in this positive direction. It is one of the many areas where the Franco-British alignment on energy and climate change can make a difference. And I'm very pleased that the French Energy and Environment Minister, Ségolène Royal, set out the case for an effective carbon price with a carbon price floor mechanism a couple of weeks ago. So I think we can hope that Europe as a whole will be a sort of champion for this carbon price cause. And while our governments negotiate and decide on action, business has its own role to play. As an official partner of COP21, EDF Group is committed to the 2 degrees target. We are part of the solution. Our role, our responsibility, our commitment is to produce low-carbon electricity and help customers tackle climate change by managing their energy consumption. For us, the battle on CO2 did not start today at the COP21. It is a battle we have fought for many years. We are the first energy company, EDF Energy, the first energy company in the UK to step up to the plate. In 2008, our sustainability commitment set out our vision. Since then, we have achieved significant carbon savings through energy efficiency and through focused stewardships of our nuclear power stations. And throughout this time, we have not just thought about our existing assets, but also the future assets we will need. And it is in that context that it's right to mention China, once again, and the historic deal that was signed a couple of weeks ago here in London. And I know that precisely when he had this state visit, President Xi was welcomed by the Imperial College, and I understand that he has been very impressed by what he saw here, and rightly so. Regarding our deal, this state visit provided the backdrop for what is a very significant milestone for UK. Together with China General Nuclear Power Group, CGN, we agreed a deal that allows us to go ahead with the construction of Hinkley Point C, a new nuclear power station in Somerset. Hinkley Point C is absolutely vital to meeting Britain's energy needs. When built, it will provide low-carbon energy for over 5 million homes and a reliable base for a low-carbon electricity system for 60 years. This agreement means that Hinkley Point C will be only the first of a number of new nuclear power stations. In the UK, £100 billion of investment are required to replace the generation capacity that will come offline in the years ahead. To its credit, the government here has recognized that to meet the UK's legally binding emission targets, a large amount of new capacity must be low carbon. And nuclear power is needed as the base of this system. Without this foundation, the complex web of generation and distributions, which makes up our electricity system, will not function. We cannot have a system which is a house of cards. Low carbon intermittent renewables need a stable low carbon base. Gas, which is needed to meet peaks in demand, but which produces CO2, needs a low carbon base. Coal, which will play an important role in ensuring the security of supply and affordability during the transition to full low carbon generation, will see a substantial reduction in its outputs by the early 2020s. And clearly, before 2030, it will have closed entirely. By the way, whilst 44% of the world's energy mix is coal, for EDF, the figure is only 4%. And as an international group, putting our money where our mouth is, we are not investing in more coal plants. Here in the UK, we do have existing coal plants. We are ensuring they are as clean as possible, and we are preparing them for closure. So only nuclear can provide a reliable low-carbon foundation. And it will last. As I have said, Hinkley Point C will generate electricity for 60 years. In that time, wind farms and gas plants built now will have to be replaced 1 or 2 or maybe 3 times by more efficient, hopefully, future versions of these technologies. I believe there is a role for energy storage and smaller reactors. I will say more shortly how we are conducting research and development to make this a possibility. But all that can only happen because the base of the system remains. And it is in that way that nuclear enables innovation. And of course, it's not just new nuclear plants that are contributing to this battle. Existing nuclear plants also have a key role to play. And we are also working today, every day, to innovate in this area. EDF Energy runs the existing nuclear power stations in UK, operating at cutting edge. And in many cases, in collaboration with Imperial, we are making sure that our existing fleet of nuclear power stations run as efficiently, as effectively, as safely, and as long as possible. Since we acquired, in 2009, the UK nuclear fleet, we have improved the output of the station and we have extended significantly their lives. Overall, the improvement made on what was expected at the time of acquisition will lead to an additional saving of over 100 million tons of carbon dioxide over the lives of the fleet. This is the equivalent of 5% of the UK entire forced carbon budget of about 2,000 million tons of carbon dioxide. This plant life extension provides a vital bridge for the future, ensuring that we can provide low carbon and secure energy up to the point that the new nuclear stations in the UK come on stream. In real life, this is an astonishingly complex challenge requiring highly specialist engineering skills, which means that the technical challenge is actually a people challenge. It is yet another reason why our partnership with Imperial College is so important for us. The research undertaken by your Center for Nuclear Engineering continues to support our work on plant life extension. And as we look to tomorrow, we know that our R&D team, working with the best that academic research can offer, will be in the position to innovate further. We don't quite know what form the nuclear technologies of the future will take, but we are committed to leading the way in researching and developing the best solutions to our energy challenges. And for instance, in nuclear, that might be a viable small modular reactor and many viable small modular reactors. And we are at the moment working to work out what needs to be done for these SMRs to operate viably in the future energy mix. And of course, we are looking far wider than just nuclear as we seek to innovate, to meet the UK and the world's energy challenges. EDF is the biggest investor in R&D of the energy utilities. Offshore wind is a technology to provide low-carbon energy across the globe, and particularly in this windy corner of Europe. Our R&D team is working hard to look at solutions to reduce both the cost and the risks of offshore wind. This includes testing new concepts and designs for turbines and foundations in real-world conditions. For me, what matters is what works. And we look at every current, emerging, and future technology that has the potential to achieve positive outcomes in the UK and help us to meet our energy and climate goals. Innovation also applies to energy efficiency, digital, and smart homes. So we are working in the emerging area of heat decarbonization. We have refurbished, for instance, Caledon Court, a Grade 1 listed building at Bridgewater in Somerset. It is our flagship national training center and a showcase for new technologies. We have designed a system which uses ground source heat pumps and solar thermal technology coupled with solar photovoltaic technology to generate electricity. This pioneering technology, led by our R&D center, will provide for 100% of the heating and 50% of the electricity needed of Caledon Court. We are also working on innovation in batteries and storage. Electricity storage is the efficient way to retain low-carbon electricity when it is available and to release it when it is needed, thus providing flexibility and helping manage intermittency. The problem today is that the many different storage technologies and concepts are too expensive to be viable for customers. Research and innovation is needed to bring the costs of these technologies down. And we are taking this forward through testing in laboratories in commercial projects. And finally, one of the most exciting areas in our industry at the moment is technological change that will lie behind smart meters and digitally connected homes. EDF Energy is at the forefront of this work. We have moved a long way from the idea of a basic smart meter to the latest concept of a fully connected home. Our dedicated innovation platform, EDF Energy Blue Lab, will deliver new products, services, and truly smart energy into our customers' homes and businesses in a way that also engages them in responding to the challenges that our planet faces. We want to empower customers to be able to consume energy in a better way. And again, we need more innovation in that sector. It is a game changer. Our Blue Lab will allow us to innovate more by collaborating more, internally and externally, with startups, universities, with bright and young innovative people, with new skills to help us to make the difference. Engaging people in these issues is the only way that we will be able to find genuine, workable solutions. And we should not forget that in all these, nothing can be achieved without future generations. They are the ones who will create and use the future technologies which will enable this low-carbon transition, this low-carbon future. We need their ideas, their creativity, their enthusiasm. With this in mind, we have recently launched a new campaign aimed at encouraging teenage girls to take up careers in science and engineering. I know a lot of you in this room are not necessarily the target audience of this campaign. But I'm sure you would agree, looking around the room, that there is still some way to go to encourage more women into the kinds of job we are talking about, and even perhaps to come to Imperial College. Our own research reveals that less than 1/3 of girls know a woman that works in science and engineering, as a job in science and engineering, and 1 in 3 girls does not think they are smart enough to become a scientist. That despite science being one of the subjects they enjoy most and perform best at school. So I'd like to finish by showing you a short film we have developed to launch this campaign. So I would like really to hear your views about this little film. To conclude, what I strongly believe, and that's why with my team and led by Mr. Paul Spence, our Director for Strategy, Research and Development, Public Affairs, etc. We are in need of your ideas, in need of your creativity, in need of your enthusiasm. And I can tell you that the collaboration that we have built over years with Imperial College is something I will continue to nurture as something very precious. The challenge that we are all facing are substantial. We need to work together to overcome them. And it is in that context that I would be very happy to take your questions. Thank you very much.
Good evening, my name's Tim Green. I'm Director of the Energy Futures Lab at Imperial College, and we play host to this annual lecture from EDF. In a short while, I'll propose a vote of thanks to Vincent, but as Vincent has just indicated, he'd be happy to take some questions. Can I just ask that you wait for the microphone to arrive when I've indicated to call you for a question, and just be aware that we're filming the event, so your question will get filmed as well. So who'd like to kick us off? See a question towards the back on this side.
Thank you, sir, first for the very exciting lecture that you've given. This is Wei from KPMG, and I have two questions for you. Firstly, I'm an economist, and now there are recent discourse within the economics field where they claim that public sector companies tend to have less innovation than private sector companies, which I believe your company would act as an exception, as a forerunner in the development and maintenance of third generation nuclear technology. So I'm wondering, what's your experience in terms of like bringing innovation into the public sector companies, and how do you evaluate like the strength of your company in terms of innovation? What are the value drivers behind the innovative forces of your company? And my second question is, do you think the partnership of your company and CNNC and CGMPC have brought you a strong foothold into the Chinese market in terms of upgrading into third generation nuclear plants? And at the same time, your US competitor has already had a very long established partnership with CNPTC, another Chinese state-owned enterprise. So I'm just wondering, how do you evaluate the strength and weakness of your partnership as compared to your US competitor within the Chinese market for third generation nuclear plants? Thank you.
Always like that with the Chinese. They are always very demanding. That's why I like them. So I take the questions now. Yeah. Try to answer. Public ownership and innovation. You are asking if it is compatible, or I think my experience and what I strongly believe, being part of a very large group, which has its roots in France, and it has been for decades entirely owned by the French state. Now it's partly private. And this is the beauty of such a company, I would say, is that we know how much we owe to our predecessors, and we know even more what we will owe to our successors, because the lead time of what we are doing, planning, investing, constructing plants, networks, and operating them for decades, is at the scale of 1 century. And that gives some sense of long term, which
I think it's a powerful enabler for innovation. At the same time, and this is also the beauty of being the electricity and this very challenging market, we need to be extremely reactive, extremely nimble, extremely agile to deliver the innovation in a context which is fast changing. So I'm just making this comment about my company, which is, I think, my group, an ideal place where you can have both this sense of long term and also this opportunity to react very rapidly to the needs of very rapid changes. So, and I hope that my lecture, which was mixing comments about nuclear, for instance, which are typical of 60 years investment, with what we're trying to do on the smart meter, the digital revolution, the connected home, give you the sense of this. I don't think the question of the ownership of the company is that important, provided that there is that vision. So the second question was about the Chinese companies and partners. Let us be very clear. 2 weeks ago, I have finalized a 2-year negotiation with a company that I have been knowing for 30 years. So that young indeed, but that's also an advantage. I was in the mid-80s with the EDF flag scouting in China to make EDF known, and crucially in his skills of excellence, hydropower and nuclear. And we were the first foreign company to put the flag of EDF on a new nuclear plant in China, in the south of China, in Guangdong province. By the way, it was already a kind of UK, Sino-UK joint venture, because Hong Kong was also investing, and Hong Kong was at that time still under the British rule. So 30 years. Since then, they have learned a lot with our help, building 2 plants here, 2 others there, and now they are building 2 EPRs. Precisely the technology on which they have decided to come in the UK 30 years later to invest up to 7 billion pounds. So that is the story. They are the company which we have helped to succeed, and by them, China to become the company which is going to build 1 new nuclear power plant every year, and will be in few years the country where there is the largest number of nuclear power plants. So a leader, starting from 0, becoming the leader in 30 years. And this leader is investing in our plants here in the UK. I think it's a great story. It's a story which is now embarking us on a partnership for 30 or maybe 60 more years. And it is a win-win deal between France, Britain, and China. So I do not comment about my competitors. See the US project, Japanese. Good luck.
Take a question in the front here.
Good evening, and thank you for your talk. I'd like to start by saying I'm French, and I'm also a climate scientist here. And I'm somehow proud of the situation France is in terms of climate negotiation, because we're quite lucky. We're not polluting much in terms of carbon. But EDF has a big role in that, and it's also got a big involvement with the state. And my question kind of relates to the role you play in climate negotiations, because you're involved with the French state. But if you look at other states, didn't get that lucky. They don't have a strong baseline of nuclear power, clean energy to start with. Places like the US, etc., where the lobby of other big companies goes towards the opposite side of the climate negotiations. So really, my thought is it really the role of a big company like EDF Energy to gear those climate negotiations, or is it the role of new, more emerging technological companies?
First of all, we are not gearing the negotiations. It's a matter for the states, for the governments, for the politicians. It's a United Nations negotiation. But as I have said, I think it's very difficult for the businesses, but also for all the citizens, to be just spectators of this big negotiation. The consequences of the success or the failure of this negotiation will have huge impact on our business, on the citizens in our country. So, of course, it does matter for us, but we are not gearing the negotiation. We are just part of a lot of conferences, colloques, discussions to understand what is happening, to give our views, and to commit ourselves to what we can do, our part, in this global challenge. And as far as we're concerned, we have described the types of things we are doing. If I was trying to identify one area where we could not guide but strongly support an idea is one of the carbon price that I've already mentioned. I think in the complexity of the decision processes leading to the right investments, to have a simple tool that can be gradually shared by more and more countries to trigger the investments in low carbon rather than in carbon technologies, is to give a price, decent price, to what has a cost, which is a CO2 emission. It's not new. Nick Stern, a brilliant economist, British, in 2006 or 7, published his famous Stern report, which I think has had a big influence, not only on the UK government, but in many countries in the world, where he said that the cost of doing nothing will be much, much more expensive than the cost of acting now on climate change. And he is one of the champions of the necessity to have a carbon price mechanism. And it should not be unrealistic, in the sense that tomorrow morning, after the Paris conference, there is suddenly a market for the carbon, universal, working everywhere. It's not going to happen like that. But I think in some areas, like Europe, we can clearly lead by the example in having policies, which I think the UK has, to have a sustainable, durable level of the carbon price, which has already made an impact. And if all the countries were doing the same thing, it will have a bigger impact. So these kind of things that as a company we can promote and support, but the negotiation is political, and fighting against the climate change is an ultimate and great responsibility that the leaders of the world have. But we have our role to play, us, the businesses, and all of us as citizens of this planet.
Okay, question in the middle here.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. So I'm Marcus, Masters of Students in Economics. I would like to ask, I see EDF has a lot of generation that is base load, but we know that energy demand is variable. And now we have renewables are also variable in supply. Before grid-wide energy storage come online, how do you see EDF reacting to this situation?
I'm not sure I fully understood. So what I have tried to say is to describe simply a very complex system where intermittent energy has a role to play. But to make it simple, and sorry if it appears to be a bit simplistic to your bright minds, fundamentally, when the winds do not blow, when the sun does not shine, we still need electricity. Until the moment we cannot store the electricity from intermittent energy, we need base energy. And it has to be low carbon. If you want the total of the energy to be low carbon, the base has to be low carbon. If not, there is no hope at all. And in the future, we will see if there are economical ways to store this intermittent energy, which will make less palatable the need of base load. But I don't expect that will happen before decades. And fundamentally, I believe that a system should not be, as we say, putting all his eggs in the same basket. They will be, for a long period of time, a combination of centralized energy with networks and decentralized energy, and sometimes disconnected from the networks. That is the future. But I don't think the future, it will be reasonable for any country to have an energy policy which is putting all its eggs in the same basket. And it is what EDF Energy does in practice. We are in this base load energy, we are investing in intermittent energy, we are investing with our research and development to find ways to have more innovative way to, an economical way to store electricity, and at the end, we will contribute to this new world which is emerging gradually, and which will give place to this innovative technology as well as the more proven ones. It's not either and or, it's and.
Okay, where am I going for the next question? On this side, we're halfway up, and we'll go to the back later.
Hi, Vincent. Thank you very much for the speech earlier. You mentioned about rollout of smart meters in the UK. Just wondering, what's your view on the impact of the rollout, and whether it's a positive impact to your market and to the consumers? Thank you.
That is a very good question. You know, we have to be very clear. It is impossible, in my view, to go on for the 21st century with technology which is almost a 19th century technology. Our old meters, they have done a good job, but it's time to move on. So, of course, we have to embark with the new technologies. The fundamental question of this new world is, for me, how we are going to be sure that it gives really more power to the customers and not take power from them. Because we could have a world where the digital technology opened the space for people saying to the customers, don't worry, I'm taking charge. You have just to put to click, and all the rest would be for me to do. It's a well-known intermediation risk that I see as a company who does not want. I don't want to lose my customers. I don't want someone between me and my customers. I think the trust is not something you can deputize, delegate to a third party. But it is also a fact that at the moment, people which are digital, people which are used to internet, there is a kind of trust in internet which is higher than trust in our industry. And the challenge for us is not to refuse the changes and to say, well, I don't want to know about this transformation, but to be part of it, at the top of it, and not let anyone putting a wedge between us and our customers on the back of these new technologies. That is my... so the smart meters is something we have to do, but I don't want, having made all the investment in installing these smart meters, that someone else come just behind and reap the fruit of this investment in putting itself between me and my customers. It is a challenge that I'm giving to my teams. Be ahead of the game. The digital transformation is going to change our business fundamentally. It's our job to make sure that it will make our business even better tomorrow than it is today. And I was mentioning the Pope encyclical remarkable text earlier this year. He's a humanist, as we all know. There is in the advertising of all the companies who are selling technology. You remember that? I don't know if it exists. Intel inside. Intel inside. I would like that when we develop the digital world, we can say human inside. It remains something where the human people and the connection between people business like ours and our customers preserve the human dimension. It's an interesting philosophical challenge.
I'm going to take one last question, which was at the back. Oh. Sorry. Maybe what I can do is I'll take a second question.
Yes, yes. No problem.
Hi there. Nuclear is still seen as fairly controversial. With all your research in storage and renewable energy, do you think one day it will be good enough that you don't need to rely on nuclear for baseload?
I'll just call the second. I'm going to squeeze one more question and then maybe take two questions together. Yeah,
Thank you. The liberalisation of the UK energy market has allowed investors, particularly foreign investors, to generate competition here. When do you think this might happen in France?
You could have asked this question 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but you are a bit out of date. There are many foreign investors in France. If you want, we can talk about it later. Including Chinese investing in airports and other things. And I have seen today that Chinese may invest in Areva. So let us move away from the prejudices and the cliché. So the question about nuclear is controversial. Depends. In this country, there is a strong majority of people supporting nuclear. In France as well. I think in this country, as it is the case in France, there are more and more people which are having a controversial approach of the wind farms. Nothing is never going to create a kind of unanimity. That's the beauty of the diversity of the thoughts, of beliefs, and the attitudes. The problem is not to impose any model, is to always be open and transparent, to engage. If we have been able to succeed to get the first planning consent, permis de construire in French, of a large infrastructure project in the UK for decades in Hinkley Point C, Somerset, it's because we have spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money in studies, in consultation, in debates with the local people. There is no issue which cannot be discussed with mutual respect. We cannot agree on everything, but we can accept that diversity of energy mix is a good choice. So people pro-nuclear will be happy, people pro-nuclear will be happy. Why opposing energies? Even in France, they have been through this debate with the loi sur la transition énergétique, which has not opposed energy one to the other. So the question was also about the future. I think nuclear has a future, a great future. It's part of the solution. It is not the only solution. Hinkley Point C will be there in 2085 at least. And our competitors' plant maybe also. And there will be a lot of other technologies in the meantime. And I hope that will create an energy mix for the UK which will address the challenges we have been discussing tonight. But nuclear is not a religion. Nobody can fall in love with the technology. It's just a way, a mean I think to be a force for good. If we do that in a responsible way, with safety as our overriding priority, and permanently being open to challenges, which is a key part of our business. We have opened visitor centers in all our nuclear sites. And recently I've welcomed, in a couple of years, the 100,000 of our visitors. It's not controversial. It can create debate, but it creates also a lot of interest and sometimes admiration for the people working in these plants, dedicated to the safety of their plants. And it is an industry which I hope will attract young generation, and because we need it, more and more young girls, because it's true that when I visit my power stations, it's still very male. And I would love to have it more diverse. That's why we are making this campaign. I don't know if I have answered to your question, but...
Okay. I'd just like to make a few remarks in thanking Vincent for his lecture. The first, I think, is I've been very struck by your comments on timescale. You emphasised the need for agility in innovation, but also the patience and planning required to achieve some of these long-term goals. I think it was very interesting that early on you alluded to your career in the hydro industry and needing to make the case for hydro against some opposition. It reminds us that first, there are no energy technologies which don't have drawbacks, and those drawbacks always need to be addressed and mitigated. But it also reminds us how much some of the debate has moved on. I think very interesting that in order to position EDF Energy as a leading supplier of low-carbon energy, decisions had to be made many years ago about how the generation fleet was to be moved forward, and that we see that now with the fresh investment in nuclear. I think the second thing that was very striking was the comments about partnerships, that COP21 will involve over 150 nations and their pledges, but actually crucial in reaching that stage were the Franco-Chinese agreements, the Anglo-Chinese agreements, and the cooperation present between France and the UK, and the role of bilateral trust and agreement in reaching multinational agreements in due course, I think was a good, very telling point. Also struck that when your remark that technical challenges very often evolve very quickly into challenges over finding people and nurturing talent. And I think that's a message that's well received in the university environment. And twice, I think you returned to that message to emphasize the need to nurture talent wherever it's found, and in particular, to encourage more women into science and engineering careers, and particularly in the energy field. And we will applaud that for sure. And on innovation, also remarking that in the end what matters is what works, and it's intriguing to see EDF Energy as a generator and a retailer, EDF Energy as a generator and a retailer, exploring a wide range of technologies across storage and home automation and human behavioural side of energy consumption. So I thank you very warmly for giving of your time. It is a very timely lecture because of the announcements on the new build nuclear, but also the preparations for COP21. So for you to give generously of your time this evening to provide a stimulating lecture is very much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.